Hello, grade 9 and grade 10 music classes. Today we're going to be talking about the elements of music. So we'll get into more about what that is exactly. For right now, just so you're aware, what we're going to be talking about in this lesson, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to, number one, learn about the elements of music. Number two, analyze a variety of music from various time periods, countries, and styles. That's right, it's not just one particular style. Every type of music kind of factors into our lesson today, so it's a really important one. And number three, we're going to learn about what makes music different from noise. So let's talk about if something is music or not. So we're going to listen to a few examples really quickly, and if you have a piece of paper, write down if you think they're music or noise. So let's take a look. Okay, so that was a style of music called Gregorian chant. It was made during the Middle Ages by monks of the Catholic Church. It was one of the very first styles of vocal music that was ever made, and it's kind of like the starting point where classical music kind of begins. So that's one type of music that we're going to look at. So just take a second and write down whether or not you think that's music. Let's have a listen to another one. Whoops, let's go on to the next one. So that was a song called Gat Kirwani by Ravi Shankar. He's a musician from India, and the instrument that you heard there is called the sitar, S-I-T-A-R. So take a moment, think about, do you think that's music, yes or no? Let's listen to a different one. So that, probably recognize that as a guitar. That is called saltarello. It's a saltarello. It's a type of dance from the Renaissance period, from the 1500s. Let's listen to something else that probably sounds a bit more familiar. She ain't real. She ain't gonna be able to love you like I will. She is a stranger. You and I have history, or don't you remember? Sure, she's got it all. But baby, is that really what you want? Let's talk so you... Hopefully you recognize that one. I don't think that requires an introduction, but just in case, that was Rumor Has It by Adele. This is something else. This is an example of techno. Have a listen. Yeah, that one's kind of funky. It's by a Finnish band called Darude, and that song is called Sandstorm. So hopefully now you're starting to get some ideas of what you think music is and what it isn't. Let's listen to one more. This is a bit more out there. This is a piece of 20th century classical music. It's atonal, which means it's not you're not really able to sing along to it. It's called Black Angels by a composer named George Crumb. And I think you've all had enough of that for now. Very interesting, but not the nicest to listen to. Um, Black 20th century music tends to be a little bit more out there sometimes, so you might get some of that. So the big question is, is it music or not? And the trick is, it's all music. In fact, it's all music. In fact, the only thing that makes music different from noise is that music is organized sound. So basically, we're just taking sounds and we're organizing them into a way that makes sense for our brains. Noise is just unorganized sound. So music is organized sound, noise is unorganized sound. So now we have to think about, where do we find music? By the way, you're going to hear my cat from time to time. She likes to sing along occasionally when she hears music, so don't mind her too much. Now let's talk about where we find music. So sometimes we'll see it on the radio or on CDs and stereo or the iPod, the computer, and the main purpose is for entertainment. Sometimes if we go to a dance, it helps you to move, offers more entertainment. If you're in a fancy elevator, it helps you to pass time and avoid awkwardness. If you're on the phone, let's say if you're on the phone with tech support, it's to help pass time and make you not get frustrated and hang up. Let's say if you go to a place of worship, like a church or a mosque or a temple, then you listen to it to praise God. And let's say if you're watching TV or movies, it helps to set the mood or add suspense. And if you are in the car, it could be for entertainment. School, it can remind you to go to class sometimes. If you are in class, if we were in class, you'd be playing an instrument with each other, but you were having an instrument at home and you're making music for the sake of learning. If you go to a wedding, you can use it to celebrate, to dance, to walk down the aisle, to contemplate. If you go to a funeral, then you're going to hear music more to remember. So depending on where you go, music always has some sort of function and it has a purpose. So let's talk about music. So we said that music is organized sound, but there's a bit more to it than that. There's a bit more of a formal definition, and there's 4 big points here that you need to make sure that you remember because they are all important. If you lose one of them, then it's not really music. So music is an art form, number 1. That number 2 uses organized sound as its means of expression, number 3. Through, number 4, the manipulation of the elements of music. So I'll say that again. Music is an art form that uses organized sound as its means of expression through the manipulation of the elements of music. So that's the big long definition of what music is. Now let's talk about what the elements of music are. Now, basically there are 6 major elements of music, and they are rhythm, pitch, timbre, not timber. That's what the sound that lumberjack makes when he fells a tree. Dynamics, texture, and form. Okay. Hopefully, some of these terms you've heard before, maybe not all of them, but we're going to go through them one by one and make sure that you understand what their significance is. So let's talk about rhythm to start. So what is rhythm? So rhythm is the controlled movement of music in time. It can affect how long a tone is played. So example, a quarter note versus a half note versus a whole note. That's an example of rhythm, those relationships. It can be the speed with which tones are heard. We sometimes call that tempo, but it kind of fits into this rhythm category as well. And we talk about the regularity or irregularity with which tones are heard. Let's say something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Da, 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 da. That's a very regular kind of rhythm. Whereas something like ba 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 da da digga digga dun 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 da digga digga dun dun, where all the notes are off all over the place, what we call syncopation. That's an example of an irregular rhythm. So sometimes we're talking about rhythms. It can refer to if the rhythms are regular or irregular. So let's go on. Let's talk about pitch. So pitch, when you're talking about a wind or brass instrument, it's the notes that you're playing. You know, in B flat versus a C versus a D versus an E flat. That's what we think of when we talk about pitch. But more specifically, pitch is what we call the physical frequency of sound. It's the highness or lowness of sound compared to the notes around it. So when we talk about pitches, we can talk about high notes or low notes on your instrument. So what happens is when we have pitches and rhythms put together, okay, they get joined together and they form a melody. Pitches are normally joined with rhythm into a melody. So melody is the ordering of single tones understood by the mind as a single entity. So it's not so much that you have pitches and rhythms all together, but your mind has to actually interpret something. So let's say when you hear dun da dun 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 da dun 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 dun. Even if I don't sing the words, I'm sure you guys know the tune. That's Happy Birthday. So rhythm plus pitch equals melody. Another example would be we could have dun 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 dun. I bet you think you know what song that is. In fact, there's a few different options for that one. It could be the alphabet song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Or it could be Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Or it could even be Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. So, as it turns out, as long as your mind can kind of process that and turn it into something that's recognizable and you can hum back, you can have a melody. So it's partly about having rhythms and pitches that are put together, but it's also about having something that your mind recognizes. Sometimes it's called the soul of music. So let's talk about the next one. It's called timbre. And again, like I said, it's not timber, timbre. So has nothing to do with trees. Timbre is the quality or tone color of sound that's characteristic of its source, and it makes it distinctive from another source. So example, when you hear a flute versus a trumpet, they make very, very different sounds. Okay? Another example would be how you distinguish your father's voice from your mother's voice. Let's say for percussionists, an example for you guys would be when you play your sticks on, let's say, a practice pad versus your binder versus a snare drum. Or let's say if you turn the snare on and off on the snare drum, that would be another example of a timbre change. So sometimes it can be about the instrument that you're using, or it can be about the way that you play the instrument and how it affects the quality of the sound. Let's talk about dynamics. Hopefully you've heard this term before. If not, we're gonna learn it now. Dynamics are how loud or how soft a sound is heard. A certain level of sound may remain constant or it may change. So we can have double P, which is Italian for pianissimo, or very soft. We can have a single P, which is piano, or soft. We can have MP, which is mezzo piano in Italian, or medium soft. We can have MF, which is mezzo forte, or medium loud. We could have forte, which is loud, or fortissimo, which is very loud. So a couple little clues here as you're working through this. Piano means soft, forte means loud. When you hear mezzo, it means medium. And when you see issimo, it just means a lot or very. So use those to help you keep track of these ones. So as you go through this list, the first one is the softest, and then we go progressively louder until we get to fortissimo, which is very loud. So those are the basic volume levels. And again, they're kind of just a category of volumes. So within piano, there are some pianos that are going to be softer than others, and some that are going to be slightly louder, but they're all kind of in the same volume range. Let's talk about a couple other dynamic markings. So those ones are all dynamic markings that you stay the same volume. Sometimes we like to get louder or softer. Music likes to grow and shrink. It likes to ebb and flow sometimes. So we have these other ones. So you can have crescendo. If you recognize the name, it used to be a brand of frozen pizza, but that's not actually what that is. It means to gradually become louder. And we recognize, and we show it in music with these lines that go from being right together to growing apart. And secondly, we have decrescendo. Sometimes we call it a diminuendo. Both of them mean the same thing if you hear them, but they both mean gradually become softer. So when you see that symbol in your music, it means that you're going to get softer gradually. So next, let's talk about texture. Texture describes the complexity of a musical composition. The word texture is used because you can add different layers to create a musical tapestry. So basically, we're taking all of the musical lines that are going on in a piece of music, and the way they fit together dictates what kind of texture we have. And we have three big ones that we like to talk about. First one is called monophonic. So mono, you've probably heard that before, it means one. Phonic means sound, think like phone. So monophonic means one sound. Monophonic texture, when we talk about it, means one unaccompanied melody. It doesn't have harmony. So basically, let's say it is polyphonic. You've seen the prefix poly before. It means more than one, or sometimes we use many. And of course, phonic means sound. So polyphonic means more than one sound. So basically, it's a few different lines going at the same time that don't quite fit together. So it's a composition of many voices and harmonies, the simultaneous combination of two or more melodic lines. And what's really essential here is that they don't really move together. They're doing their own thing. So let's say, row your boat. Let's say, that old game where you go row your boat gently down the stream, and then somebody joins in as you go merrily, merrily, and they go row your boat at the same time. So you'd be singing two different lines and they don't line up, but they're creating a musical texture there, and that's called polyphonic. Okay. So note that both lines music are written as melodies, not as chords. So you're having multiple melodies being played or sung together that don't quite line up, and that's polyphonic. Okay. Now here's where I have to be careful because the next texture is similar, and they often get confused, but they're very, very different. So homophonic, when we hear homo, it means one, and phonic means sound. So homophonic means sounding as one. Okay? So some people tend to confuse it with monophonic, some people tend to confuse it with polyphonic, but something totally different. Basically, homophonic texture is a single line of melody or multiple lines of melody with chords or accompaniment or same or similar rhythms. So basically, that's the big thing that sets it apart from polyphonic or monophonic, is that they have same or similar rhythms and that there's harmony going on with it. Okay, so let's say if you go to a church and you hear a choir and they're all singing at the same time and they're singing, but they have different parts and they're creating harmony together and it's all kind of moving together as one, then we consider that a homophonic. Or let's say if we have two flutes playing a duet, but again, the rhythms are the same, but the notes are a little bit different. That would be an example of homophonic. Or let's say a guitar, a bass, and piano playing chords together, and they're all moving at roughly at the same time, and that's homophonic. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the rhythms are exactly the same, but as you're listening to something, if you want to tell if it's homophonic, you have to ask yourself, is everything generally moving together? If it's polyphonic, then you're going to have something where there's melodies, but they're not moving together at the same time. They don't quite line up. And if it's that's polyphonic. And if it's monophonic, then you're going to have one line erasing the exact same thing. So let's talk about the next part, which is called form. So basically, form is the overall structure or plan of a piece. We kind of think of it like the musical map. There are many types of form. There are the three common musical forms that we're going to talk about in this lesson are binary, or AB, ternary, ABA, and rondo, ABACA. Don't worry about those letters too much right now. I'll explain those in just a moment. But right now, let's talk about some of these forms a little bit. So basically, when we talk about these forms, basically, we're going from section to section. So for the first, 20 or 30 seconds of your song, what's happening versus the next little bit of your song. And we're just trying to compare what's going on side by side. And as you listen to it, you start to notice patterns. So binary form has two musical ideas, which we're going to call A and B. And they alternate back and forth, but it always ends on the second idea. So to give you an example here, take a look at our shapes there. We have a triangle and a circle. This is just meant to help illustrate. So as you hear this, triangle is A and the circle is B. And we just kind of repeat over and over. But we always end on B. So we're going to listen to a song to help us out a little bit. This is Donkey Riding by Great Big Sea. And as we listen to it, I'm going to start yelling out letters just to help you out a little bit.
Way, hey, and away we go, donkey riding,
Here's A.
Way, hey, and away we go, riding on a donkey. Was you ever
Here's
in
B.
back lunch and timber on the deck, where you break a bleeding neck riding on a donkey? Way, hey,
And back to A. It sounds familiar, right?
Donkey riding, way, hey, and away we go, riding on a donkey. Was you ever
Oh, and back to B. The guy's singing by himself again.
Wish to God you'd never been born riding on a donkey. Way, hey, and away we go, donkey riding, way.
And that's
hey,
A again.
Away we go, riding on a donkey. Was you ever in
Oh, and back to B.
where you tie up to a tree and the girl sit on your knee riding on a donkey?
So you notice we kind of go back and forth between those two big musical ideas. The part where they're singing in harmony as like a chorus, and then we have the one guy singing by himself. So you go between that A theme and that B theme back and forth. It goes on for another couple of minutes, but it ends on the B theme. So that would be an example of a binary form. So anything where we have chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, but we end on the verse, it's going to be a binary form. The next one we're going to talk about is ternary form. And ternary means three. So our basic form here is ABA. It doesn't mean that we have three different ideas, but we're going to have three sections in our basic form. So ternary form has two musical ideas that alternate. The music must end on the first idea or a variation of it. So the basic form is ABA. Could be ABA-BA, ABA-BA-BA. We can't just keep going AB-AB-AB for as many times as we want, but we have to end on A. So, example of this would be Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So, A is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are. And then we switch, we go to B. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. And then we repeat the first section again. So we go back to A. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. And that's pretty much it. Another example really quickly. Let's have a listen. I Will Remember You. Here's A, that's our chorus.
Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Keep not
Oh, sounds like we're on the verse now. So this is B. Oh, and we're gonna go back to A again. I won't make you sit through the whole song. If you'd like, you're welcome to look it up. But I'll play the last little bit. Let's see what happens. Oh, we go back to the chorus again. So that's the A section. So it looks like we end on the A section in this one, which means it's going to be a ternary form. So the big thing to watch out for when you're trying to tell the difference between binary and ternary, they both have an A and a B. The difference is that ternary is always going to end on the A. So it's almost like a sandwich where you have bread on the top, bread on the bottom, and then you have something else in the middle. You can have other pieces of bread. You can have like a double-decker sandwich if you want, but you're going to have your A section at the start and at the end, and you're going to alternate back and forth in the meantime. So these are your first two forms. We're going to deal with one more with this lesson, and it's called rondo form. And it's a little bit different. This is ABACA. So in this one, we actually have more than one musical form. Rondo form. Sorry, we have more than two musical themes here. Rondo form has several musical ideas that alternate, but the first idea is always repeated before and after the other sections. So in fact, we can have more than three. It could be ABACABA or ABACADA, but the trick is that we have our A section that keeps alternating, and again, we kind of make a sandwich out of it. But the difference between rondo and ternary is that ternary only has two themes, and rondo has more than two. It could have 3, 4, 5, 7, 18 in theory, but who would want to listen to a song for that long? Let's listen to one more piece here. Hopefully you recognized that before. If you like to watch old TV, that was a theme from Masterpiece Theater. It's actually a piece called Rondo by a French composer named Mouret. That was the A section. And then we go into something completely different. You can hear the mood changes completely. Have a listen. Here's the B section. And you hear that A section that we heard at the beginning starting up again. Oh, that sounds different. That is our C section, something that we haven't heard before, so something brand new. So now that we have a third theme in the mix, we know it has to be a rondo. Oh, it's going on for a while, but it sounds kind of like the same stuff. Oh, wait. Now we're back to A again. And we're doing a bit more of A. So that is an example of rondo form. So another one that you see often in popular music is when you see verse chorus or chorus verse. But we have a bridge thrown in the middle. A bridge is a kind of a section that doesn't really fit with the verse of the chorus. It's just kind of meant to kind of bring us into the end of the song. So popular music uses this a lot. But if you have more than 3 themes in a popular piece of music, it's probably some sort of rondo form. So basically, that is pretty much it. Please make sure, hopefully you've taken some notes here. I'm gonna attach a PDF of the note sheet that I usually hand out with this lesson. It'll be in your best interest to fill it in. Make sure that you try the quiz for this week, and that will kind of run you through all the big stuff, and hopefully things go well. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next one.